Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for having me. My name's Gemma Voaden, and I'm the Senior Manager for NetZero at Together Housing Group. Together Housing is one of the country's larger social landlords. We own and manage over 38,000 domestic homes over quite a large geographical spread as well, mainly Lancashire and Yorkshire, the M62 corridor, if you know it. The difference in Together Housing is we've actually been doing this quite a while. We've put a long-term plan in place back in 2020, where we decided to make energy improvements or retrofit as the norm. So rather than going out on a ledge and sort of chase funding, do the improvements and repeat, we put a strategic commitment together with our board and leadership team, including a 30-year plan on how we can commit to net zero and in improving all of our properties to the best of our ability. So the first thing we had to do was understand the scope of the challenge. And at the time when I joined back in 2021, it was massive. We didn't actually know for certain what 16,000 of our properties had already. So we put a massive program in place to go out and resurvey every property in our portfolio. And what that did was give us a great amount of data so that we could actually put that strategic plan in place and basically roll it out and do as many improvements as we could with the budget that was set. And what that led on to is strategic procurement. And what I mean by that is actually getting your contractors, getting your internal teams and your residents on board together so that we're all singing off the same hymn sheet, so to speak. Together's got some massive goals. We have the goal of removing all fossil fuels from our properties by 2035, and we have about 29,000 left with fossil fuels within our properties. To install 50 megawatts of solar PV and batteries across our housing stock and supported housing, which will create a virtual power plant, and to reduce our carbon emissions by 2030. Most social housing have the EPCC requirement as well, and we are on target for that. So at least one of our properties has had, well, at least 8,000 of our properties had one measure, whether that be cavity wall extract and refill, which Andrew mentioned earlier. That's one of the easier wins to do. If it's never had cavity wall insulation, we've put it in. And if it's had old cavity wall insulation, we've extracted and refilled it. We've installed over 1,000 ground source heat pumps. We've installed over 2,000 air source heat pumps, 1,200 solar PV and battery systems to our domestic properties, and then 1,783 solar PV installations. So that just doesn't include a battery as yet. LI is loft installation, so we've insulated just shy of 3,000 lofts so far. External wall insulation, I've got a great picture to show you in a minute. We've done 354 of those. And the reason that's far lower than the rest is because it's extremely expensive, which I'll talk about in a sec. UFI is underfloor insulation. So you can hopefully you can see the robot on the left-hand side that's spraying insulation. That's up to the floor void underneath. And as Andrew said earlier, you can lose up to 15% through your floor. So if there is a suspended floor, we are insulating it to reduce that. And then ventilation measures. Both the previous commentators have mentioned, we also have to be really careful because our properties are heating more during summer. So when you're trapping that heat in, you need to make sure you're ventilating correctly so that any moisture that's created within the properties, it's free and clear to remove it. There's a lot of challenges that come with retrofit or energy improvements. Believe it or not, all of our schemes are free to residents completely. We are self-funded or grant funded for all of the work that we impart, and we still have up to 20% of tenant refusals. Now, most of that is due to, as I say, they visit fatigue. So in the retrofit journey or in the energy improvement journey, there are a lot of surveys that need to be done. And that's to ensure that we're not doing the wrong thing for the residents or the properties themselves. So we have to do a lot of technical surveys. Bad press. Again, as Andrew mentioned, there's a lot of bad press about heat pumps out there, which we are targeting and trying to improve as we go through. Because change is hard. It's hard for all of us in one way or another. You know, our residents find it difficult too. So we're ensuring that we communicate openly, honestly, and backing it up with data and testimonials. All of our programs have dedicated tenant liaison officers on our side, so the social housing side, and our contractors. We've got internal project officers with technical experience and know-how from everything that we're fitting so that we have as much information that we can impart to residents at the time of install. We also ensure that we communicate the way residents prefer, ensuring we myth bust along the way that heat pumps are not the devil. In fact, they can work really, really well, and I'll show you some proof of that in a second. I think the easiest way of doing it is actually turning our residents into those energy champions, collecting those testimonials and the hard proof that the costs don't spiral out of control if they're being used correctly and if they've been installed correctly. In fact, one of our tenants has it set at 23 degrees constantly and pays on average £98 per month in winter for heating, hot water, and all of her energy bills, which is a massive reduction on what she was paying previously. As I've said, I won't go into DNO issues because that's an electricity grid, and because you're down in Surrey, you won't have the same issues that we have up north with our power grids. But right products for the property and getting it right first time, that is also fundamental because the properties themselves can be challenging and the plan needed for those energy improvements may not be the same for every property. Making sure you get it right first time and ensuring the plan that's being put in place is right for that property in that location and how the residents are going to use it going forward. It's all very, very important. So here's a couple of examples for you to show the work that we've done already. Deep retrofit to us is external wall insulation, loft insulation, and heat pumps. So you can see on the top left there, that is how it was looking during the installation. And we've put 100 mil of mineral fiber insulation on the outside and then a self-cleaning render on top of that. One of our residents was watching the thermostat like a hawk. Just the insulation had been put on and the indoor temperature went up a whole degree instantly. We also trial a lot within Together Housing because technology is constantly advancing, new products coming to market. So making sure you know what's available and what will work for our properties is key. So we've trialed insulation paints, infrared radiant heating. That is going to become massive in the future, as far as I believe, because heat pumps are not right for every single property. So we have to come up with something different to move away from fossil fuels. You can use battery storage for heat as well as solar, which can reduce your costs, and cork insulation. Now, this is a before and after, again, of a non-traditional build. So this is what we call a system build property. And we've literally just sprayed the external surface with cork insulation. And again, that has improved the energy performance because it keeps the heat inside the property, but still allows moisture to travel. So if there's any properties which have a damp or mold issue, this kind of insulation works brilliantly because it's vapor permeable and breathable. I even put my money where my mouth is. On the left is actually my property. As you can see, the previous render was damp and falling off. And I actually couldn't allow any family members to stay in that back bedroom because of the damp and mold internally. So I sprayed it with the cork insulation. And now my parents can visit me from South Wales whenever they want because we have the bedrooms to accommodate them. And I think it made the property look great as well. You don't have to just apply it outside, you can also apply it inside. And you can, I won't go into too much technical detail, but it does improve the thermal insulation and will improve the energy performance rating because you can do calculations such as what's called a U-value calculation. This is the insulating paint that we trialed. So it's a ground floor flat of a high-rise building. It was a G-rated property, so the worst of the worst. We painted every single surface within the property with insulation paint. Before the insulation paint went in, The maximum temperature that that property would get to was 12 degrees. Just with the paint, it increased to 17 degrees. And that's just with insulation paint. Then we changed the wet electric boiler system to infrared radiant heating panels, and we put a battery storage system in there. That has not only increased the EPC ratings, but it's also made it affordable for us to now rent out. It is rented to a small family, and they're absolutely loving it.
2 minutes, Gemma.
Okay, Airex, that's an automated air brick. So again, Andrew mentioned you lose 15% through drafts. This is an automated air brick which will shut to keep heat in and then open when you need to ventilate the void space. So again, there's more technology out there that can combat very different things. Solar PV. So there's solar PV panels on the roof there, and on the right-hand side is our battery system, making sure that we can store that energy and use it when it's required by the resident. We're installing a lot of things to our properties, so we also need to make sure we're being careful on how that health of that property is managed and making sure that we're not putting customers and residents into fuel poverty. So we also install some temperature and humidity sensors, which can also look at the consumption for energy. And if you can just about see it there, you've got 9 kilowatt hours of energy being used average daily, whereas actually it's assumed that it would need 57 kilowatts, and that is the performance of a heat pump that Andrew mentioned earlier. This is actually 450% efficient. And this is a case study. This is Jackie that had her heat pump installed, and like for like, so it's the same family, same property, a gas boiler during a winter cost £1,300. Exact same property with a heat pump the following year with she only had the cavity wall extract and refill and loft top-ups for insulation, and we've saved her £251 of energy, and she has become our tenant champion, and she's willing to speak to any resident on the benefits of what a heat pump has done. Long-term success. It is all about education, sharing lessons learned, which is why exactly I'm speaking to you guys now, because we have to share the good, the bad, and the in-between. Because if we don't, we're not going to move the energy improvements forward like we need to do. And just sort of a visual note, if you like, the amount of carbon that Together Housing has reduced being expelled into the air would equate to 5 hot air balloons full of carbon dioxide. And yeah, I think that's quite a visual sort of note to end on. Thank you very much.